They say you can't go home again, but Teddy Bridgewater proved them wrong. He didn't come back to South Florida chasing applause, chasing money, or chasing a career revival. He came back because that's where he was made. Miami Northwestern High didn't just give Teddy a football field to play on. It gave him a foundation, an identity, a place that hardened him and launched him into the NFL. So when the bright lights dimmed and the league no longer needed him, he turned his eyes back home. And when he walked into Miami Northwestern, he didn't just walk into a school, he walked into a battlefield. A program that had once been proud was fading, sinking, becoming irrelevant. That wasn't acceptable to Teddy. He wasn't going to let the place that gave him everything sink quietly into mediocrity. So, he picked it up himself, brick by brick, dollar by dollar, hour by hour. And within a year, he shocked the state of Florida by turning losers into champions. Then the system thanked him by suspending him. The question is why? The truth is, Teddy Bridgewater wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. Former NFL quarterbacks don't go back to broken high schools to paint fields and buy team meals. They go into media, business, endorsements, or cushy jobs where the grind doesn't touch them anymore. But Teddy was different. He didn't want ESPN cameras. He didn't want a seat at a broadcast desk. He wanted to look those kids in the eyes and remind them what's possible. When he took over, Miami Northwestern was dragging. 4 wins, 6 losses, no energy, no swagger, no belief. For a program with history, it was rock bottom. Yet Teddy saw himself in those kids. Raw, hungry, and overlooked. He knew exactly what that felt like. And so he didn't walk in with speeches, he walked in with work. He showed up every day. He put money from his own pocket into things that mattered. And the kids responded. In 1 year, Miami Northwestern flipped its record, stormed through the 6A division, and walked away state champions. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens when someone gives more than the system ever expected. And Teddy gave everything. But here's where it all got messy. While Teddy was teaching kids about accountability, sacrifice, and resilience, the rulebook was being sharpened against him. See, high school football isn't just football. It's politics, it's power, it's egos. And when one man succeeds too quickly, the whispers begin. How did he do it? Did he cheat? Was he breaking rules? The reality is, Teddy wasn't paying for recruits or slipping kids' cars under the table. He was paying for Uber rides so kids with working moms could actually make practice. He was paying for food because hungry teenagers don't perform like champions. He was covering rehab bills because one of his players got hurt and had nowhere else to turn. He was buying paint for the field because the school wouldn't fund it. None of this was hidden. In fact, much of it Teddy self-reported. He admitted it openly because he believed, in his heart, that helping kids can't possibly be a violation. But according to the state, it was. And that's how a man who rebuilt a dying program got suspended for being too generous. Now, here's the hypocrisy that has fans furious. We live in the NIL era. High school athletes are signing sponsorships with national brands before they even take a college class. 16-year-olds are cashing checks bigger than most adults make in a year. They're being chauffeured to college visits in Bentleys, dining on catered meals, rocking exclusive cleats gifted by sponsors. That's all perfectly fine under the new rules. But when Teddy Bridgewater, a man who actually came from the same community, spends his own paycheck to make sure kids get fed, suddenly it's a violation. How does that make sense? In the same world where Raising Cane's sponsors 7-on-7 tournaments, Teddy can't buy water bottles for his team? The punishment isn't just outdated, it's insulting. It screams hypocrisy. It says corporations can throw money at kids, but a coach can't show basic humanity without being accused of cheating. And that double standard is exactly what people mean when they say this felt personal. But the whispers didn't stop with, he paid for meals. No, they got uglier. Rumors started spreading that Teddy was buying cars for players, that he was recruiting outside the district, that he was bending every rule in the book. Of course, no one had proof. No documents, no photos, no receipts. Just gossip. And in the cutthroat world of Florida high school football, gossip spreads faster than truth. Other coaches couldn't stomach what Teddy did in one season, turn a losing program into a championship powerhouse. So they weaponized the one tool they had, suspicion. They whispered loud enough that administrators had no choice but to investigate. And once investigations start, someone always finds a rule to twist. It wasn't about whether Teddy's actions were noble or not. It was about power. about making sure Teddy Bridgewater knew that no one, not even a former NFL quarterback, could walk in and flip the system without paying a price. And let's be honest, this wasn't just about rules. This was about control. When a black man from the same community walks in, wins instantly, and uplifts kids without playing politics, the system panics. History has shown us this over and over. Too much success, too fast, and suddenly the microscope appears. They start looking for cracks, not to understand your greatness, but to dismantle it. Teddy's turnaround didn't just embarrass rival coaches. It embarrassed administrators who had failed those kids for years. He showed them what could be done with heart and sacrifice, and in doing so, he exposed how little the system had actually been doing for its players. That's why he had to be stopped. Not because of Ubers or meals, but because he broke the unspoken rule: don't make them look bad. Now, if you want to understand why this stings so deeply, you need to look at who Teddy Bridgewater really is. This isn't a man with a history of cutting corners or chasing glory. In the NFL, he was known as humble, selfless, quiet. He once gave an entire game check to equipment staff. He never chased headlines. He led with actions. He was the kind of player teammates respected because his ego never entered the room. That same Teddy showed up at Miami Northwestern. He didn't coach for cameras, he coached for kids. And every dollar he spent, every ride he paid for, every injury bill he covered, came from the same place: love for his community. Ask his players. They'll tell you he wasn't just a coach. He was a father figure, a mentor, the man who believed in them when no one else did. For some of those kids, Teddy wasn't just teaching football, he was saving lives. And yet, the system framed his compassion as misconduct. And if you don't believe the system got it wrong, listen to the community. Parents have gone on record saying they trusted Teddy more than administrators. Players have said without him, they wouldn't have stayed in school, wouldn't have pushed through injuries, wouldn't have believed they had a future in the game. Fans in South Florida rallied online, calling the suspension a disgrace, a betrayal, a witch hunt. Some even argued this wouldn't have happened if Teddy had been just another coach with no NFL background, because then he wouldn't have been seen as a threat. That's how deep this runs. When everyday people defend you louder than the institution condemns you, that tells you everything you need to know. The truth is, Teddy's suspension says more about the system than it does about him. Because when you punish a man for feeding hungry kids, what you're really saying is that you'd rather starve them than admit the rules are broken. When you suspend a man for covering rehab, you're saying you'd rather a teenager stay injured than accept help from the wrong source. When you attack a man for painting a field, you're proving that appearances matter more than dignity. This wasn't about football. It was about control, about reminding people who's in charge. And in that sense, Teddy's suspension was never about protecting the game. It was about protecting turf, ego, and outdated hierarchies. But here's the part that the system didn't plan for. You can suspend a man, but you can't suspend impact. You can bench a coach, but you can't erase what he gave those kids. You can write violations in paperwork, but you can't erase respect. Teddy Bridgewater's name means something far bigger than a title or a sideline whistle. His influence doesn't end because administrators stamped suspended on his file. Those kids still carry his lessons, his example, his belief in them. Parents still see him as the man who stepped up when no one else would. And fans across the country now see the hypocrisy in broad daylight. By trying to silence him, they made his story louder. So, what happens now? Maybe Teddy won't be on the sidelines at Miami Northwestern this season. Maybe he won't call plays on Friday nights. But make no mistake, his shadow will still be there. His fingerprints are on that program forever. And every future coach who dares to step into that school will be measured against what Teddy accomplished in one season. That's not something administrators can take away. That's not something jealous rivals can erase. Teddy Bridgewater's suspension will go down as a cautionary tale, not for him, but for the system that thought it could stop him. Because the truth is, all they did was prove his point, that sometimes the rules are designed to keep the wrong people in power and the right people on the sidelines. And maybe that's the biggest takeaway of all. Teddy Bridgewater didn't just win games, he exposed flaws. He reminded us what real leadership looks like in a sport too often consumed by politics and money. He made us ask uncomfortable questions about who gets punished and who gets rewarded. And in the end, he showed us that even when the system tries to shut you down, respect will always outlast rules. So if you're keeping score, the system may have suspended Teddy Bridgewater, but he walked away with something far greater: respect, loyalty, and a legacy that no committee can ever strip away.